Make no mistake about it, Project 2025 is just a consolidation of power to remain within a particular ethnic group of the country. And that is just all it is. Each and every one of these proposed changes to the way government is operated here in the United States has a racial bias to it. We're going to talk about that and how it affects you and I with the Department of Housing and Development, HUD. I'm Antoine Anderson, and this is the Ujamaa Network. Thank you for joining us. Project 2025 is a festering wound on the body of politics. It seeks to revamp every aspect of our business as usual approach to politics. It wants to just throw the rule book out and replace it with an autocratic system of government that eliminates lots of protections that have been built up over the years. The housing and urban development branch of the government, in particularly, is under attack at this current time. The opinion offered by the Heritage Foundation was authored by none other than Ben Carson. Yes, that Ben Carson, former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. Benjamin Carson was also the Secretary for Housing and Urban Development during the COVID years, where we saw massive amounts of evictions and foreclosures just waiting to happen. When the government shut down, there should have been a plan to make whole those landlords who are now missing their rent payments because their tenants could not go to work. And what the government did, reluctantly, the Trump administration did, particularly reluctantly, was to allow the bill put forth by Nancy Pelosi to give the tenants some cash to get them through. Was only able to agree to $1,200. That's right. That's what we got. Now, other countries had maintained a certain amount of income throughout the entirety of their lockdown. That wasn't the case in the United States. Even though the Republicans did not offer any way in the field of additional assistance and actually voted against that stimulus bill, it didn't stop Donald Trump from putting his name on each one of those checks for a bill that he and his party opposed. And this is what's so sickening to me, to all those really non-politically aware individuals who are touting how great they were doing under Donald Trump, how soon they forget. And this was just one of those areas where it is just plainly obvious that those policies just didn't work for the American people. Hindsight being 2020, now that we're facing over 80,000 evictions in 2023 alone, primarily single black women in the metro area. Why? Because they never recovered from that initial blunder by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, just not to support those landlords. And now here we are, 2024, and the person the Heritage Foundation has tapped to write or author their opinion on how the housing and urban development program should be run is by none other than Benjamin Carson. Just let that sink in for a second. Now, while you're allowing that to sizzle in your spirit for a little bit, I want you to pay attention to the fact that where you see the most evictions are outside of Atlanta. Fulton County is remarkably unshaded green, meaning that the cost of rents in metro Atlanta, in the actual Midtown area, and in Fulton County has exceeded anyone's ability to get in, let alone get out of. There are no evictions there because the people who are there can afford to live there. No one's getting kicked out, but no one's moving in. Where you're seeing the most evictions is on the periphery of Atlanta. All the touching counties, all 5 of those counties, remarkable increases in evictions. And that's only because people simply can no longer afford to even live near Atlanta. So they're getting forced out further and further away from the population centers of metro Atlanta area. this is not by coincidence. What is happening is you're seeing supply and demand at action. What is that doing? Well, the limited supply of available housing units or living units in the metro Atlanta area has dropped, but the increase of demand from all the people who have been forced out of metro Atlanta and Fulton County are now being redistributed to all the surrounding counties. What does that have the net effect of doing? It causes the property values in those counties to go way up, which means you, as a homeowner or a potential landlord, you're seeing increases in your insurance rates, increases in your property tax values, which is causing you, if you are going to decide to rent out your house, to raise those rents. Just a nasty cycle repeating itself over and over again. I myself have seen in the last 3 years, this is since COVID, that my property taxes and insurance for the home have risen threefold. That's right, from well under $1,000 to almost $3,000 per year. Yeah, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, and that's just in taxes. That is not the insurance. So you're starting to see the squeeze and the problem exacerbating itself, all because of mismanagement during the COVID years by the very person who is now telling us in no uncertain terms that we're going to turn it over to the private sector and run the HUD like a business. And that is why we have a 19,000 unit occupancy in the control or under control of just three corporations. It is consolidating the wealth and charging the average everyday customers too much money for them to even afford to get into their homes.